this is a big area of passion of mine, and it's one of my topics of expertise for my PhD. So we'll talk primarily about education in these with all the AI stuff that's been going on. So what I can do. Oh, can y'all see that? Okay, that's even better. So first of all, we have to talk about what is generative AI. And so essentially the idea that AI researchers have been using for the last few years is that natural data, so you think about images, text, music, audio, all sorts of things, follows a very complex distribution. By distribution, I mean probability distribution. And if you're not in the field of like statistics, this may seem, maybe weird to think about it that way. But if you theoretically think about data as following some sort of a really, really complex distribution, then in theory, we could fit a statistical model around it. And if we can do that, then we can sample from a model like that and get new data out. The main two modalities of generative AI that everything has been exploding over the last year or so is with images first, and then with text, with things like Chat GPT and GPT-4 and GPT-5 soon. But in this talk, we'll primarily be talking about text, almost exclusively. So some of the applications specifically for education are one in writing assistance. So even if you're very, very good at grammar and you know how to write, a lot of times just carelessly we make some mistakes. Sometimes you just don't know whether a certain word should be used in a certain way and all of that. So AI, especially the latest versions, are very, very good at writing assistance, improving grammar, by improving grammar and style, I mean, the style is more consistent. It can assist you in structuring essays, writing research papers. It can't do the research for you, but if you have the research, it can help you very quickly get something going. Something where I've used this in the last week, I had this idea that I proposed to my fellow research peers and at the CTE, and I wrote out this document with math formulas and everything. And basically what I did is I gave it to GPT-4 and I said, okay, write this up. And then I go in there and tweak it. And I say, write this up. And so this process of going back and forth really saved me maybe a couple hours writing this thing. Another one is reading comprehension. So it doesn't matter how good, how smart you are and whatever. A lot of times you can read something very complex, maybe a paper, maybe in this paper, the authors mention something that they think is trivial, but maybe it's not immediately obvious to you or anyone. And so you can ask this AI that's essentially read the entire internet and has a very good understanding of more things than any of us could possibly, maybe even combined, possibly have time to look at. And so it can help you answer questions. If you're struggling about a specific phrase, what does inductive bias mean in machine learning? I don't know. So you ask this model, you get an answer. Another one where I've really used it is in research assistance. So coming up with new ideas, summarizing articles and papers, really more the first one, coming up with new ideas. For me, drafting code and all of that is very, very helpful. But in general, in research, it could be very helpful. And again, it's kind of an anything expert, the way that I like to think about it. You can chat with an expert that is very, very patient with you, can answer any questions, even though they're, stupid questions, no such thing, but you know what I mean. And you basically get to chat with this expert for as long as you'd like on any topic. before we move forward, I'd like to give you a quick demo. So my computer's a little slow. Over here, I have everything. So I have GPT-4. By the way, you see just how often, I've used this very, very often for all sorts of different things. But the first one that I'll show you is for helping with writing assistance. So let's say you write something and you're very, very bad at, writing, very grammatically bad. You just want to put something together and you want it to sound more cohesive. So here is a very, very bad paragraph, also written, by the way, by GPT-4 for this example. But you could see last week, me and my family should be my family and I, and all of that. This does not look good. And if you just append to the very end, you just write, I wrote this. Can you please help me fix it? We can get very quickly something that sounds a lot more cohesive, a lot cleaner, very, very quickly. I mean, in a matter of seconds. So this allows you to focus on just communicating your idea, whatever it is, and you can quickly get something that sounds very, very nice. And also you notice, okay, this is my family and I, before it says me and my family. So I can ask if I'm curious, why did you correct me and my family to my family and I? And I'll quickly get a nice grammar lesson, and maybe I learned something from that. So that's the first demo. This is somewhere where it doesn't matter. You can get, even if you have a very, very not so rough draft, you never know if you could get a phrase or two out of it. There's always something that you can get. The second example, I'm in computer science, and I think computer science is one of the main areas where this tool can be very, very helpful. Here's a buggy implementation of merge sort, which is a very, very famous sorting algorithm from the 1920s, 30s, still very used today. In Excel, by the way, when you sort, that's what it uses. But this is a buggy implementation. This is just a very bad implementation. So I can ask the computer, what's wrong with my code? Please help me improve it. Now I know that this is missing something here. I need to have another one of these. I know that, but let's pretend like I don't. So you'll see, okay, there are some issues here. And quickly, if I have an issue, instead of having to look it up online, like I used to and everyone used to, now not only will I get the corrected code, I can get feedback on this code. Here you'll see he's going to have another one of these. So this is what was missing. Now I can ask, why did you add the second while loop? And if I'm curious, I can get as much out of it as I want, right? This is not just for, cheating and getting the right answer. Like so many educators are scared of this tool, because it'll just give you the answers. But ideally, what we have is this vision that we can use this to ask why questions more so than please do this for me. So, and you see, I got a very, very detailed answer. The last example, very briefly, that I'll show you is actually one where I've used this. So I'm taking this reinforcement learning class. It's a fascinating class. And there's a concept of upper confidence bound. And what I like to do is I like to use this kind of like an AI tutor. So I'll say, please just teach me the concepts and ask me questions. Just quiz me on all of this material. Make sure, like your job, AI, is to make sure that I understand the concepts. So kind of in a Socratic way, I get a Socratic tutor for $20 a month. It's very worth it. And so I've done this before. I've asked him this exact same thing, and I've gone through all of this. And you see, it kind of takes me on this journey of the way that education really should be, in my opinion. But I get taken on this journey where I answer all of these questions. How would I balance these two strategies? So I get to answer, and then we get to talk with the AI. So that's a little demo. Now, some of the benefits that are not immediately obvious, I think, when you first hear about this chat GPT and all of that, like all of us did in November, December of last year. Um, First of all, the learning is personalized. So in the last example that I showed you, I ask the questions, and if there's something that I'm missing, I can ask a certain question that maybe if I'm in a lecture hall, either maybe I'm a little bit shy, I don't want to ask a question. Maybe everyone seems to get something that I am struggling with. I can then just ask this AI, and the AI can teach me, and it's much more personal than education really ever has been. Um, the second thing is more engagement. So in this case, I'm not just learning by reading a textbook. I'm learning by interacting with the material. For that reinforcement learning class, for example, something that GPT-4 actually suggested is, would you like to write some code together that can demonstrate all of the things that we've been talking about? And so I'm very engaged with everything because I get to write the code alongside the AI and really understand how everything that we talk about in class, that's theory, how is that actually implemented? The next thing, and I really use this a lot, is continuous feedback. So I will write a piece of code and put it into GPT-4 or whatever AI. I use GPT-4, but you can use whatever. And say, what can be improved about this? I really, really care about optimizing my code for clarity, for simplicity, for all of these things. So I ask it, and then I get a response back. And I would say I've been doing programming for 15, 16 years now. I'm 24. And probably this year I've gotten a big leap of improvement because I've been doing this for the last few months. And probably one of the most important and exciting benefits of these tools is that we can get very high quality, incredibly high quality education tools for very diverse populations. Really, all you need is an internet connection, because ChatGPT, there's a free version. If you can afford the $20 a month, thank God I can, then you get that extra quality, but you still have a higher quality educational tool than anyone ever had in history, probably in human history, for free. All you need is an internet connection. It's literally free. But of course, it's not perfect. We still have a long, long way to go. The first limitation, I'd like to talk to you about three specific limitations here. The first one, which I think is probably the scariest, is called automation bias. And that's when you trust the machine just because the machine is right so often, and it does everything so quickly. We tend to have this bias that the machine is right. And so we might not look specifically at, if GPT-4 writes me a piece of code, maybe I just blindly run it and just trusting that it does what I think it does, or what it tells me that it does. And actually, a big field in cybersecurity now is, how can we get these models, how can we trick them into giving code that's not secure, that maybe will bypass the human? That's the next sort of stage in cybersecurity, is how can we trick these models to bypass the humans? So it's a big thing to make sure that we always review the code. If GPT-4 ever writes anything for you, make sure to read it all the way through. We can never fully rely on these tools the way that you would never rely on an autonomous car, I would hope, to just drive on its own. You'd always, still be at the wheel, not fall asleep and all of that. But it does all the heavy lifting for you, which is nice. The second one is the most obvious one, which is that students may use these tools to cheat on assignments. And so far, there is no good way to detect it. OpenAI, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but they put out this tool that allows you to detect whether something has been written by GPT-4 or ChatGPT. And they took this tool down quietly because this tool was actually worse, get this, worse than a random guess. So there's no good way to detect these things. 5 days ago, OpenAI released DALL-E 2. I don't know if you remember, I had this. These are images that are generated by a different AI, but they look very, very realistic. And so it's a big concern that people are going to start faking data and faking all these images. And something that OpenAI really made sure to do is there's watermarking in there. They can detect, even though it's not visible to the human eye, they can detect that something's been generated with GPT-4 or with DALL-E 3. We don't have a good way to do that with GPT yet. And large language models, because of the way that they're trained to be as nice to you and agreeable as possible. And sometimes that means that they'd rather make something up than say, I don't know, because they're so agreeable. And so the term for this is hallucination. That's the term that's used in the literature, where it'll just make something up and just pretend like it knows something that isn't true. So we always have to make sure to fact check these models. There are advances that are being made to mitigate this, though. But of course, the big question that everyone's been asking, especially over the last year-ish or so, how do we move forward? I think that this is no different from any other technological revolution. You know, at first there weren't cars in the early 1900s, and then there were, and then there were planes too. And that just opens up new possibilities. Sure, some jobs are going to be lost, but in every technological revolution, jobs have been lost. And so what we have always done is just move forward, find new jobs. New jobs are being created by this technology too. And now people are working very, very hard on prompt engineering. How can we interact with these models so that they give us higher quality feedback or output? So our job as educators is to include these technologies in the curriculum and make sure that students don't fall behind and they know how to use these tools. Imagine if a university in, I don't know, the 90s said, no, we don't want our students using computers. Or in the 2000s, we don't want students using the internet. They'd fall behind. So our job is to teach students how to use these AI models, how to interact with them so that they have still the competitive advantage in the workforce. Again, it's not humans versus AI. Gary Kasparov's TED Talk was very interesting on this. It's humans plus AI. Jonan, who's here, Dr. Donaldson, likes to say augmented intelligence. AI is augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. It's human plus the AI. But all of that being said, I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming, and I'm open to answering any questions that you have.